Good morning, good morning. This is a sort of mail call. Sort of. Um, it's generally considered rude to read letters from one man to another. Generally. So if I have a letter from one of you lot, it would be rude if somebody else read it. But there are many letters which were intended to be read by a much wider audience, or history allows us to use those letters as an insight into what people were thinking, what people were saying. Now, this is in part an answer to Brother George. Brother George asked me a rather strange question. Strange if you didn't know that we both knew roughly what we were talking about. He asked me if I'd read about the Ante Nicene Fathers. When he asked me the question, the answer was no. So this morning I find myself with 10 minutes before I've got to go and do something. So I picked up a book and flipped it open. And the page it opened at was on the Ante Nicene Fathers. Funny how that sort of thing happens. And what we find in here is a letter. And the writer tells us who he's writing to and who he is. He also tells us a little of what he is. I went to a school many years ago that taught Latin. And there was a certain amount of controversy about how Latin should be spoken. Is the C soft or hard? Now, I don't know. So I'm going to read this the way that I was sort of taught. And the letter starts, "All-powerful Caesar Titus Hadrianus Antoninus." That's the name of the Roman emperor. Caesar, king if you like, emperor. Titus Hadrianus Antoninus. And the writer describes him as venerable and merciful. I'm not sure that too many Caesars were merciful, but it's a good way to start a letter. You don't want to say, "Dear Fred, you're horrible, rude, over..." So you write a letter with a bit of flattery to start with. And it says that the letter is from Marcianus Aristides. Marcianus is how I'm going to say it. Those of you that wish to correct me, please do. I shall not be offended, upset, and I won't unsubscribe you. And he says that he's an Athenian philosopher. And he starts the body of his letter, "I, O King, by the grace of God, came into this world, and when I had considered the heaven and the earth and the seas, and had surveyed the sun and the rest of creation, I marvelled at the beauty of the world. And I perceived that the world and all that is in it are moved by the power of another. And I understood that he who moves them is God, who is hidden in them and veiled by them. And it is manifest that that which causes motion is more powerful than that which is moved. But it would be vain for me to search out the nature of this mover of all, for it seems to me he is indeed unsearchable in his nature. And it would be vain to argue as to the constancy of his government and try to grasp it fully, for it is impossible for a man to comprehend it fully. I say, however, concerning this mover of the world, that he is God of all, who made all things for the sake of mankind. And it seems to me that this is reasonable, that one should fear God and should not oppress man. Now the letter does go on, not too far, but perhaps further than it is suitable for a YouTube video. But Marcianus, Aristides, he is expressing his understanding of Christianity long before the writing of the creeds that many of you will say in church on Sunday. That is why he is described as the before Nicene, the Ante Nicene Fathers. So there we are. Then we go on. St Justin Martyr, who writes letters to Antoninus Pius. St Melito of Sardis. This sounds good. This sounds really good. St Melito of Sardis was one powerful preacher who has been woefully misunderstood in modern times. How many of you have been in a church and heard a powerful preacher preaching salvation, sin, repentance? But St Melito of Sardis was one powerful preacher. We'll have a look at some of what he had to say later. Right, I'm going to go and do other things. There we are. I've gabbed too long. Run out of time again.